So bang, the Ace of Spades when it really goes big time for Motörhead. They've had their first, well, the second album, but really well, yeah, it's the second album. But Overkill was the one for Motörhead that finally saw them get on the musical map and really come in with a bang like Overkill. The song that's definitely introduced the Motörhead sound, and Lemmy's got his vocals sorted, the gravelly way of singing. That's got them going, and then Bomber keeps up the momentum. The same year, the second album they do with Jimmy Miller, um, they do Bomber, which is kind of very much, just keep, as I say, keep the momentum going. And as classic and as esteemed as those two albums are, there's little sort of dispute that they were leading up to the Ace of Spades, which is just this Slash, the guitarist Slash, obviously. But he said you got all your this genre and that genre. He said your records, back in the day when people had records or CDs. This style, that style, and various styles. But Ace of Spades was by itself. I mean that is Motörhead. So I mean, and this is one they did with Vic Mail. So they've done the previous two of Jimmy Miller. Unfortunately, by Bomber, Jimmy Miller was obviously back on the heroin, and they had a lot of trouble trying to keep him at the control desk because he's always sloping off to shoot up and then passing out and etc. So this time they got Vic Mail, who was so they called him Turtle because they said Lemmy said he looked like a turtle, but only from certain angles, which I'm sure pleased him. And he Eddie said what was with Motörhead, there was a kind of they look quite scary, and they were quite scary. I mean, you hear about the rucks that Eddie and Phil used to have. I mean, these are two guys actually really trying to hurt each other. Phil would break his hand punching out a roadie, and he did it. He hit a junkie as well before, in the early days. So having to gaffer tape a drumstick to his hand and all this sort of thing. And him and Eddie would go at it, and it was awesome. The thought that Lemmy kept these two really fiery personalities in check. Apparently they'd be fighting, and they would say, "Right, that's enough for you on stage now," and they'd stop. They go, oh, "Okay." And then they play a gig, and then as they were coming off, Phil would be behind Eddie, and Phil would punch Eddie in the back of the head, and it'd be back on. And there's that wonderful story, man. I don't know if it's been embellished or something, but what the hell, it's so quality. But they were in a hotel, and in the foyer there was elevators on one side of the foyer and elevators on the other. Two sets of elevators on the other side. The elevator came out. Lemmy said he's sitting in the foyer. The elevator on one side came down, and Eddie and Phil come rolling out, like trying to punch each other. And at the moment, the elevator on the other side, directly opposite, its doors open, and they roll into it, having a bundle, as Fast Eddie would have called it. The door's shut, and this elevator goes upstairs. With them completely oblivious because they're trying to knock hammer and tongs out of it. And they were almost as well. I think, despite his fearsome appearance, Lemmy with the missing teeth and whatever, he was quite a gentle chap at heart. And I think those two almost acted like his bodyguards sometimes. I mean, there's that story, I think he tells in White Line Fever, sort of in the early days when they were at some pub, and apparently Lemmy, he pulled some bloke's woman or something behind this bloke's back. This bloke wasn't too happy about it, so he smashed the pool cue over back of Lemmy's head. And we said, while he was still like, what? But Phil and Eddie had already got this guy, dragged him outside the pub, and were giving him the good news, so to speak. So, they were not to be trifled with at the end of the day. This is where this rather long, convoluted story of mine is going. They were not to be trifled with, and if they weren't happy with someone in the studio or something, they weren't shy in making that known. But they completely couldn't do anything to Vic Mail. Eddie said, well, first of all, Vic Mail, he had diabetes. I mean, Lemmy says it killed him. He died of it, but I checked out, and it says he died on Wikipedia. Says he died at 45. God, it's only 18 months older than I am now. 45 from cancer. Lemmy said he died of diabetes, but anyway, he died. Rest in peace. Died at 45. But so he had diabetes, so he was very, but he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he had to eat at specific times, and he was very slightly built, quite a small guy. So he said obviously that they weren't going to sort of drag him out of the studio or whatever. But they couldn't. That didn't prevent him like having a go at him, or because apparently he rode Motörhead. He got Lemmy properly singing. Lemmy said for the first time he actually tried singing. He really reined in Phil Taylor. He said you've got to concentrate more on the beat and just stop going wild and trying to hit every drum, on your kit at the same time, sort of thing. Because he kind of had that Keith Moon side to him, Phil. So he did that, and Phil Taylor says, so they get irate from this. Oh God, Vic, and apparently he was on completely the one level, and he was like, now you really shouldn't tell me to back off, should you? Because it's not very nice. He'd be like that all the time. So any chance to get moody with him or irritable or just curse him or something, just hit a wall. It was a waste of time. And I think at the bottom line is they really love Vic and he really loved them, and he definitely on that album, I mean, that is genre changing, all the sort of buzzwords. That is really it's a classic album. And he got that thing out, the classic three. Funny, cohesive. Overkill, Bomber, some great tracks, not so good tracks in place. I've already done videos. I've already done the video on those different albums. But this one, it really just sort of solidified it. I could go on making these, whatever metaphors or whatever the word is, but he got that sound, and it's so crisp. It's so just on the money. So excuse me, let's get my beer. So that was Vic Mao and Motörhead. So they really drew the Ace of Spades and having Vic. Is that a good card? I don't know. I don't really play cards. I'm gonna go to the track listing here. So right, well, Ace of Spades. That's the first song. I've never really liked this song. Well, I don't dislike it. I'm just completely mad about it. And it for a number of years, it stopped me getting to Motörhead because it's always, it's the track everyone knows by Motörhead. And it's always like track, well, it used to be, I'd say back in those, you get a double tape selection. Something, greatest rock hits ever or something. Is always track one, was always Ace of Spades or greatest driving anthems. A picture of a Trans Am on an American highway stretching off to nowhere across, a desert. It was always that sort of track, and I used to think, well, that's that. And so that's Ace of Spades. For me, I've never been that taken by it. And Lemmy said he grew to hate it, but apart from in the Robbo period, Robbo refused to play it. Lemmy said we should play it. It's what people want to hear, and to not play it is very bad news. And that's there's no doubt in that, denying that. Phil Taylor, I was in an interview with him, and these were his words. He said, they said, were you surprised by how popular Ace of Spades song the Ace of Spades became? He said, yeah, I was, because he said in the studio and recording, he said, and this is his words, he said, I didn't think any more of it than a piece of shit. That's his, quite a harsh put down almost. But I mean, I've got to hand it, I mean, the intro, I mean, whoever played a bass like that? It's mad. Someone's like a bag of spanners falling down the stairs. And that riff, that ultimate sort of buzzsaw riff. I can't get very infused talking about it because I recognise just how new and vibrant it would have been. Just completely like nothing had anyone ever heard before. I don't know if sometimes you get these old, almost bootleggy CDs, as it was, I used to get of Motörhead, and you hear there's Ace of Spades is called like old version or rare version, and the riff it's in A if you're musically minded, and it goes down 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 down. So they originally had a completely different riff for it, and somewhere along the line got rewritten, and it became the first track, and their best known track, But as Lemmy said, we could have got famous for doing a Turkey. At least it was definitely a Motörhead track. Number 2, Love Me Like a Reptile. Someone asked Lemmy once, how do you love someone like a reptile? And he said, carefully. I once read something like he wrote the lyrics for this one on the back of a cigarette packet when he was in the bath. So yeah, I love that track. Brings back some memories, that one for me. Shoot You in the Back, love it. Clint Eastwood, the Clint Eastwood the love of Clint Eastwood fast that he had, which was originally sort of, well, was previously done as Lawman on the Bomber album, but this one, I think Shoot You in the Back is the better tune. You know, Western movie really kicks in. And it's just that wonderful, crisp, clean. Well, obviously not clean as in no distortion, but everything bright in the mix. Live to Win. Just let me just go out there, get it, do it. Don't moan, don't sit around, etc. Which was always like the public front of Lemmy, but you read about people who knew him. Apparently, he had his down days. Apparently, when he was fired from Hawken, he was absolutely distraught. He's moped around for ages, hoping that Hawken would invite him back in. And sometimes Lemmy, Phil, and Eddie said, you know, it's a bugger getting into rehearsals. He'd sit in his squat or something and do drugs. He didn't want to do anything. But he, you know, publicly, he always had this sort of bullish, you can do it, push it to the max type attitude. But I think, you know, like he was only human. Like most people had his down days. He just didn't really write songs about them. Fast and Loose, again, that sort of live up to the rock and roll image. The guy knocking on a bird's door at 2 a.m, you know, don't get up, get down instead. Another gentle exhortations. What's the word? Yes. Whatever. But yeah, it's like, you know, hey chick, let me in. I'm dark, I'm like the night, and all that sort of thing. And number 6, We Are the Road Crew, which apparently brought a tear to even the Eagle's eye. The Eagle was one of Motörhead's top crew for almost all their career, I think, and he was being interviewed. I think his first name's Ian. I found him once on Facebook, and but he said he's a Scottish guy, and he said, oh, you know, first time I saw Motörhead, I thought they were the meanest motherfuckers in the world. They all walked in a pub, the 3 of them, like that. And then he was talking about trying to get the sound. He's had something to do with the monitors or something, the Eagle, and he said when he's being interviewed, he's always got this this rolled cigarette that's gone out, and he's holding it like that, and he goes, the thing is, the human ear can only take so much, then it shuts down. So when you're trying to do the sound from Motörhead, you need more and more and more to get over the ear shutting down. It's mad. Fire. Yeah, track 2, side 1. I think he introduces that on No Sleep's Hammersmith. Jailbait. Well, as Jerry Bond said, this was a very real concern. I think, you know, Jerry Bond, the one who signed to Bond's records, he said, you know, he was on the road with Uriah Heep. He said you had to be careful of this sort of thing when you were, you know, knocking about with certain ladies backstage, that they weren't, they were above a certain age. So he said, Lemmy was writing of a very real problem. Also, as Lemmy said, I don't even care to know your age. I'm just happy that you're here backstage. Dance. This track is the only one that's ever sort of dismissed as being slightly fillery. I always thought Dirty Love. I don't dislike Dance, I like it, and it's over very quick. It is just the one track that doesn't have its own kick, because other than that, I think they've all got their own kick sort of thing. They're very much individual tracks. I would have had Dirty Love in place. I mean, it's on the reissue as an extra track, but yeah, I would have had Dirty Love, because that is a really good track, and that's got its own groove, its own vibe, whatever you want to call it. Bite the Bullet, or as Lemmy sometimes introduced it, Masticate Upon the Projectile. Yeah, just listen, this relationship's over, I'm out of here, I'll see you later, and all this sort of thing. And normally live, it's before the Chase is Better Than the Catch, and live the two songs normally went together. Certainly with the classic trio. And the Chase is Better Than the Catch, where Lemmy said that the song was about how when you chase a, or in his case, chase a woman, or whatever your preferred, whatever gender you are and whatever you're into, but you chase the love, your current love interest, and then once you get them, it's the thrill's no longer there because you got them. And he said also when love gets stagnant, and your partner starts leaving their knickers on the bathroom floor and all this sort of thing. That's what he said. But he said it went broader than that. It's like anything, when you're pursuing anything, like you're a musician and you want to get signed and famous, and you get signed and famous, and is that it? Is this it? Sort of thing. It's not like the expectation of something is always much better than the actual reality of it. It was what Lemmy said about the meaning of the chase is better than the catch. At number 12, The Hammer. This one's a little filthy. That was always dedicated to Filthy Phil. Yeah, believe the hammer's coming down, just a brutal song. Yeah, the hammer will find you. Filthy Phil's drums will find you. That's quick. So that was, that is the Ace of Spades, 1980, and that briefly put Motörhead right at the top of the pile. The new wave of British heavy metal, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, Lemmy always denied Motörhead were a part of that. He said they were too late for it, or too early one time and too late the next, or something. And we're not heavy metal anyway, we're rock and roll and that. But to everyone else, they were kind of, they were there for like Saxon and Iron Maiden and stuff. I mean, Iron Maiden would get much, much bigger. But for a while, certainly in England and Europe, they'd be huge in England. Then they go, I think it was next year, 81. They go out and they support Ozzy Osbourne in the States, and they were really demoralised. They were getting sometimes like catcalled on booed and stuff. Whereas in England, they were just huge. They were saying at Hammersmith Odeon 4 nights in a row and all this sort of thing. So, for a little while, as Lemmy said, we ruled, as Fast Eddie said, we ruled the roost. And Ace of Spades was the one that really, really broke them in England and Europe. And it would continue for another couple of years until sadly they broke up. Or Fast Eddie left anyway.